Hello and welcome to Checkered Flag Extra. We're back for your F1 fix in non-race weeks, giving you exclusive content from drivers and team principals, past and present. A reminder that you can listen back to our review of the Canadian Grand Prix on BBC Sounds for in-depth analysis of that race. Make sure you're subscribed to BBC Sounds as well and have push notifications turned on in your phone settings so you never miss a new episode. This week, we'll be hearing from Mercedes reserve driver Valtteri Bottas, who discusses everything from his early days in racing, meeting Toto Wolff, becoming Lewis Hamilton's teammate, and much more. I'm Harry Benjamin, and I'm joined by the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson. Andrew, firstly, we didn't actually hear from you after our Canadian Grand Prix review, because I think you had to dash off and catch a flight home. So what did you make of the race and of course, that McLaren collision?
Yeah, well, it wasn't the greatest race until that moment happened, was it, Harry? That certainly livened it up. I think, Zach Brown, the CEO of McLaren Racing, and Andrea Stella, the team principal, they've been saying for a while that that's going to happen. I think they probably didn't expect it to happen in that way. It wasn't really a kind of... it was a racing collision in one way, but it was more of a sort of like really quite bad error of judgment from Lando Norris, who kind of ran into the back of his teammate as he was trying to close on him down the pit straight. And he immediately sort of owned it. And I think that diffused any tension that might have emerged, at least in public. But I think there is a bit of a concern about Norris. He's not proved to be the best in racing wheel-to-wheel situations so far this year. People might remember coming out of the pits alongside Verstappen in Japan when he sort of ran onto the grass. And then obviously there was the Miami Grand Prix where although the time that they took to get past Verstappen was quite comparable, Norris and Piastri, Piastri did it in a much cleaner way, which cost him a lot less time in terms of the pure race time than Norris, who sort of ended up in, going off track and this, that and the other at various points. So, and now there's this thing where, I don't really quite know what he was trying to do because there wasn't room to go where he was going. And you could see that by the fact that he hit his teammate's wheel and the pit wall in the incident. So it's damaged Norris's championship position, obviously, and really firmed up Piastri's. And I think it's going to be quite hard for Norris to come back from that, at least on current form. But there is still 14 races to go, so still all to play for. But a few question marks for Norris to sort out there.
Yeah, certainly. And more of those questions to be answered next week when we're back racing in Austria. You can listen back to the full review of the Canadian Grand Prix on BBC Sounds with myself, McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird. So that was a fun one to discuss with him. And also 5 Live Young Commentator of the Year from about 2018. Kai Bacchini also joined us in that one, so you can check that out. But what we didn't cover in that, because we focused on the on-track action that had immediately happened, was all the action that subsequently followed in the steward's room in the many hours that followed. Lando Norris was handed a 5-second penalty after that collision. It means nothing because he retired anyway. But Red Bull lodged a protest claiming George Russell drove erratically behind the safety car and displayed unsportsmanlike behaviour. It was rejected by the stewards, since Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff has described the protest as petty and embarrassing. Andrew, was this Red Bull making a mountain out of a molehill here?
Well, the stewards certainly thought so, Harry. And interestingly, there was another aspect of the protest that Christian Horner, the team principal of Red Bull, talked about before they lodged it, which was to do with the distance from Russell to the safety car, which they were going to include in the protest and ended up withdrawing when it became clear that the only reason Russell had been further behind the safety car than he was allowed to be was because he was following his delta lap times on his steering wheel, which the drivers are required to do when it's a safety car period. So I think I mean, obviously, Wolff's comments are quite strong and perhaps not surprising because there's no love lost between Christian Horner and Toto Wolff, as everybody I'm sure is well aware who listens to this podcast. But I do think there was a feeling within the paddock afterwards that it was a bit spurious, this protest, you know. It didn't really look like there was anything bad going on behind the safety car between Russell and Verstappen. And you know, to accuse Russell of unsportsmanlike behaviour while, you know, because he'd complained about Verstappen over the radio, well, Red Bull are the first people and Verstappen to complain about rivals. And quite right, you know, there's nothing wrong with it, you know, but for them to then throw that at somebody as if it was something that, we'd never do that sort of thing, you know. I think you could certainly call out the irony of that situation.
There is spikiness there, isn't there? Obviously, there is between sort of Wolff and Horner, but Russell and Verstappen, there's a bit of a sort of, is it frenemy? I don't know. They've come together a few times over the course of the last year. George Russell, it almost seemed every chance there was a microphone in front of him, he was quick to remind everybody how many penalty points Max Verstappen was on. And that was getting to Verstappen.
Well, I don't know whether it was getting to him or not. I think that would be a wrong conclusion to draw. Not necessarily a wrong conclusion to draw, but just...
Well, he said it in a press conference, didn't he? He was sick and tired. He called it childish.
That was about the questions about the ban as opposed to Russell's comments particularly, because what had happened was Tom Clarkson, the host of the FIA press conference, had raised it with Verstappen, and Verstappen said, well, you raised this on Thursday already, and then that's when he made the remarks about being childish. So I wouldn't presume to know what was going on in Max Verstappen's head, but it is certainly true that there's history there between Russell and him. It goes back to Baku 2022 when they had a collision and they had a bit of a sort of handbag style argument. Then it all got quite a lot more serious around the Qatar Grand Prix last year, where they were both obviously very upset with each other, and Russell decided that enough was enough. It's a kind of strange dichotomy because when they're together sitting in a news conference or on the bus going around the track or whatever, they're quite happily chatting sometimes. But it's very clear that not very far below the surface, they've both got buttons that they can press with each other that certainly ignite tension. I don't quite know. I mean, who knows why that is? There's something about each other's personality, I think, in certain situations that rubs the other one up the wrong way. And I just think, you know, as long as they're both in F1, the way it looks at the moment, we're going to carry on having these flashpoints, which is all part of the drama, isn't it, Harry?
All part of the fun. Well, let's hear now from another member of the Mercedes family. I sat down for a nice long chat with reserve driver Valtteri Bottas. We spoke about what's next and also about his career so far, from starting out in F1 at Williams to being Lewis Hamilton's favourite teammate.
5 Live's Checkered Flag Podcast.
Valtteri, thanks for taking the time to join me for our Checkered Flag Podcast. Now, I kind of want to know, you're a driver, you have to sit down and do these all the time. What is the question you actually hate getting the most? Just so I know not what to start with.
I don't really hate any questions. I think it's more just in the weekend, if there's a certain topic, you get the repetition of the same questions of, you know, if something been happening or... one thing I probably get the most is, what is your favorite circuit?
Oh,
do you know what it is?
Let me just get rid of that one. No, what is your favourite circuit?
Japan, Suzuka.
Okay, very nice. Yeah. Right, well, I'll skip on now because that's the first question answered.
Yeah.
Thank you, Valtteri.
No
we'll come on to a little bit about what you're doing this year, but I want to just take it back, if I can, if you can jog your memory to baby Valtteri. When did you know motorsport, that's going to be my path in life?
The first time I tried a go-kart when I was 5 years old, that's when I knew. Formula One, that's my target.
What brought you to the go-kart in the first place?
It was kind of an accident. We were going into the town with my dad and we saw a sign that there was go-karting Finnish championship race, like 10 minutes from where I live. We went to watch it and I just loved it. But I was still too small to fit into any of the karts. So the next summer we went back and I could fit into one, and that was that immediately.
And then the rest is history. I mean, did you have any kind of inspirations? Obviously, you finished. Were you looking at the Finnish drivers, the champions that had been beforehand?
Yeah, definitely. I was watching all the races on TV, and Mika Häkkinen, he was doing well in the 90s, so he was big hero for me, big inspiration, and a real motivation.
So you embark on this journey. Then you're going up through the junior categories. You're making your way. You're picking off championships, and then now I want to come to the beginning of the relationship with Toto Wolff. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but at some point along this timeline, you meet a guy called Toto, and he ends up as your manager or part of your management team. Talk me through how that whole relationship began.
It was after my first year in single-seaters, 2007. I was in the Formula Renault 2-liter doing the Northern European Cup. I did pretty well for the first year, and after that season, I got offers from Red Bull Junior Team, Renault Junior Team, some other management companies. Toto approached me, Mika Häkkinen with Didier Coton approached me, and then I had to make a decision. And I was really, it was quite stressful for me, young driver making a decision where to go to. So then I was really honest. I was actually between Mika and Didi and Toto. I was kind of split between them, and then I had an open chat with all of them, like, guys, I don't know what to do here. I want to work with you, but I also want to work with you. And then they actually decided to team up. So Toto, Mika, Didi created a group together.
Because you asked them to, basically.
Yeah, and they were happy to kind of, split the risk as well, from their side. So happy days. That was a good decision.
What did they bring to you at that time? How did you need guidance at that stage?
So
of your
from
life?
2008, of course, they were, mentoring me, helping me out, helping with connections, but also financing my racing from 2008 onwards. The Formula Renault Euro Cup, Formula 3, GP3. I could have not afforded that by myself. No chance. So they obviously helped to finance it, but also they have good connections, and that's what I needed as well, proceeding in my career.
And to have some of those names, big names at the time, backing you must have meant a huge amount. You mentioned, obviously, you went up the categories, got to GP3, which is sort of now Formula 3, essentially, won that. And then what I'm really interested by is there's loads of talk, especially in the last couple of years, when Max Verstappen came into the sport. He didn't do the Formula 3 and the Formula 2. He went from, I think, European F3 straight into F1. Even your new teammate for this year, Kimi Antonelli, missed Formula 3 and went straight into F2. But you were kind of one of the first to not do a series, because you didn't step up from GP3 to
Correct.
GP2, did you?
Yeah.
You went into the F1 periphery world, is that right? Why was that?
So yes, it was a risky move. One big part was the money. F2 is extremely expensive and risky. If you don't end up in the right team, because you're gonna win it straight away. That's the name of the game. And we got this opportunity at Williams to be. I was already part of Williams, kind of the junior program, but to be able to do 15 Friday practice sessions throughout the year, go to all the races, learn about it, trying to show my speed. So it was a risky year to do that, but all I had to do was to show to the team that I deserved the seat, and I managed to be in most of the sessions faster than the race drivers, and then they realized, okay, who's the test driver here, and maybe he should be racing, and that's what happened. So
that was 2012, wasn't
correct?
it? 15.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot by any reserve driver standards to get that many. So you must have felt quite confident that the next year you were going to make the step to be a Formula 1 driver.
Yes and no. I still had to show that I'm capable of doing it. I still had to show my speed and my progression throughout the year. So it was. I knew it was a super important year in my career to get that seat.
Can you remember that first experience in a Formula 1 car and what it was like? Can you kind of talk me through the sensations of it?
Absolutely. The first time I was in an F1 car, I think it was 2010 at some point, did like a straight line aero test. So it's just going on an airfield back and forward.
What it says, in a straight line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But still, you get sensation of the speed, of the acceleration, of the brakes. It's really something else. And then my first time on track was Abu Dhabi test in 2011. And it's mind-blowing at first, but then you kind of step by step get used to it.
So you've done a bit of straight line testing, then you get those free practice sessions in 2012. which was a pretty good year actually for Williams. They had some strong results there. I think Maldonado, wasn't it, took his win that year.
Right. Yeah.
When do you get the phone call that Valtteri, you're in 2013 full-time F1 driver?
It was quite late in the 2012 season, probably like just before the last two events. They told me that it's decided. We can sign soon for next year, and it's crazy. It's surreal, as a kid to get your first proper Formula 1 contract. And I think the first thing I did was called my parents, and obviously they were super happy.
Nice. And then you get to 2013. You're the full-time Formula 1 driver for a team with such history and heritage as well. But it's a tough year, isn't it? That first season, you're a rookie anyway, but the car isn't quite there in terms of performance. But if I remember, there were some good flashes from you. I think Canada in qualifying, I think you put it third on the grid, didn't you?
Yeah, in the mixed conditions.
Yeah,
that was,
But that's just that. But you still got to be pretty good to put a car like that up on the second row of the grid.
It is, like I said, tricky year to be having a first year in Formula 1. The car wasn't that great, but there was a couple of highlights that I think secured my spot then for the future, and that was Canada qualifying, and then my points in Austin, so it meant I finished ahead of my teammates in the points in my rookie year. I think some of those little highlights that secured my spot for the future.
But then of course, I think it's 2014, regulations change and you have a Mercedes power unit in the back of that car. And it's like someone's just flipped a switch with the car, right? Did you know straight from sort of pre-season testing that, okay, we've got a rocket ship here, we've got a car we can fight with?
We saw in testing, I think that year the testing was in Bahrain probably, and we saw early on that, we've got pretty decent package here, and we could see that Mercedes power unit was definitely ahead of everyone else to start with, and but still going to the first races, it was quite surprising how well we did, and I think that season managed to get a few podiums as well, which was pretty cool.
Was it Austria your first podium?
Yeah, that was the first one.
I mean, again, that must have been another special moment where you call your parents. Well, they would have seen it anyway on the TV, but another special moment for you.
Yeah, very very special, and those kind of moments you just don't forget.
So you spent a few years with Williams. There's ups and downs, and towards, I suppose, the end of the tenure, the performance is starting to drop off. Nico Rosberg wins the World Championship in 2016 and then drops the microphone at the end of the year and he's gone. When that happened, did you think, I've got a shot here? Were you already in the loop? Can you talk me through the timeline of that period where you transitioned from, I'm going to go for another season with Williams, to suddenly, I've got the promotion to Mercedes?
I was signed for Williams for 2017, so that was a tricky part. It took some time to solve that out, obviously I was one of the probably 100 drivers that called Toto when the news broke of Nico.
You must have thought you had a bit of an edge, though.
I thought I'm in a good position because Toto obviously knows me. He knows what he will get, and I had pretty decent early years in Formula 1 with Williams. I was showing good speed, showing the performance, so I think I had a good chance, but it was only in January that it was actually done, and that's when Toto told me that okay, that's what we've decided. The board is happy with this decision. Let's do it.
I was led to believe, was there some kind of shootout to get the seat, or is that complete rubbish?
No
complete
shootout.
Rubbish.
It was during the winter break, and so they took the whole December and then all the way till almost mid-January to make the decision, but there was no shootouts.
Well, you get the seat, and then you're alongside Lewis Hamilton in a championship-winning team. When you're heading into the first briefing, what's that like, the experience of it? Because I imagine you obviously knew Lewis a bit because you're both on the grid at the same time, but suddenly your teammates there, you're working with a massive factory and an outfit that is delivering win after win. Do you feel a bit of pressure there?
Of course you feel pressure. Everyone is expecting great things from you, and I was against Lewis probably at his peak performance years in his time in Formula 1. So and not just the outside pressure, but also from my side, because I wanted to do well, and so for sure it's still, it was quite early on in my career that I jumped into that. It was a big thing for me.
I mean, it's tough to be anyone's teammate, but to be, Lewis, who's gone on to be a 7-time champion as well, must be something else. But I mean, your stats, 10 race wins, 20 pole positions, 67 podiums. But the thing I picked up most was what Lewis said once you departed the team, and I'll read it again. He has been the best teammate I've had the pleasure of working with. Your speed and resilience has been impressive, but what you truly stand out to me is the human being you are. I mean, that relationship you had seemed to go beyond just teammates. When you hear that again many years later, how do you reflect on your time with him?
Yeah, it's very nice of him to say that, and if he really thinks that, that's really cool. And of course we were tough competitors against, especially the early years. I think as not normal when you're fighting for the titles, there is some friction. But just over the year by year, we got closer, and we had even more and more respect each year, and I could say we became friends, which is really nice. And we made a strong team. We won 5 constructors together in a row, which is pretty cool. And I've only got good things to say about Lewis as well.
Your profile as well must have heavily increased during that time too. I mean, how was that to deal with? I think Netflix was Netflix wasn't until a bit later, I suppose, but that whole Drive to Survive effect, being in a team, a race winner in Formula One, having been, a quiet character when you first came into the sport, how did you weigh that going forward in your career?
Yeah, for sure. When you're consistent in the podium, you do race wins, pole positions, you become more and more visible. And of course, at the end of that, my time at Mercedes, the also popularity of the sport really started to ramp up. Again, big thanks to Netflix.
There's no boom mic over us at the moment. I think we're okay.
Yeah. You never know. Yeah, for sure. But you don't really think about it that much. You're in the moment. You're focusing on your career. You're focusing on your job. It's only when you have that moment to step back and look at the big picture, you realize that things have changed quite a bit. If I go back 5 years,
Well, that brings me on actually to the next point, because obviously you depart Mercedes and you join Sauber, Alfa Romeo, whatever we wanted to call them at the time, and you've said that was a bit of a mistake in hindsight. So I'm not going to dwell on those years.
Yeah.
But what was interesting to me is how, if you put Valtteri, then and now, alongside the Valtteri from 2013, I mean, you look a bit similar, but you're two very different people almost. Would you agree?
I think same persons has really come out of my shell. I think I was quite almost like a robotic person, just focused on racing and not really being able to make fun of myself or many things. So just over the years, especially, I think with that change of team atmosphere and also my life partner and all things combined, plus the experience, I've just learned to look at life in a different way, have much more open-minded.
Is it quite easy in this world to take yourself too seriously? And can that be a detriment at some stage as well?
It is, and especially when you're new to the sport and when you're young. Of course, it's natural. It's just everything is about Formula One, but soon you realize that it's not sustainable. You need to have other things in life, and also life is easier if you learn how to not take certain things too seriously, especially yourself.
Now, you are a social media king, whether you like it or not. I mean, was that an active part of you growing into your personality that you are? You wanted to showcase this is who Valtteri Bottas is.
I think it's just happened. It's not like I planned that. In 3 years I want to be this kind of character or anything. It's just me. I think I'm just way more relaxed to showing things what I do, keep things fun, and so on. So it's almost everything's just kind of happened and fallen into its place.
Now I've got to ask Valtteri, what is next? Come on.
What is next? That's. I've just had lunch, so probably coffee.
Nice. Coffee.
But
like
long term, let's say, things are wide open, which is actually quite a nice place to be in. It's exciting because, again, at some point this year, I got to figure out for next year what's next.
Now, just mentioning, you've had lunch, you've got time for a coffee. Obviously, I suppose your commitments are a little bit less this year, being a reserve driver now. But I mean, what is a day-to-day as a reserve driver and working alongside George and Kimi?
It's definitely less busy, yes, but still, especially this weekend, actually, pretty full on with partners and doing hot laps and stuff like that.
Talk to me, sorry.
Yeah, but it's obviously way more relaxed than before. But mainly, I'm here part of all the meetings just to keep up to date what is actually happening within the team, with the drivers, with the car. I'm also kind of observing if I see something, if I can actually help and step in, especially with Kimi. He's still new to the sport. It's another new track for him to learn. So I'm quite involved in that learning process for him. Then I'll be able to do some testing, especially in the European season, just to keep me sharp, do some sim work, stuff like that. So yeah, pretty busy.
Okay, and we ask everybody this in these podcasts so far. Out of all your races, Formula One and beyond, what is your best race? And I'll put in brackets so far, because we're hoping to see you back again next year. But right now, if you had to lay it down, what is your best race?
My best race is 2019 Australian Grand Prix.
And why would that be?
Why would that be? I was just, the whole Sunday, I was just in this, when you get that flow state, everything almost feels like easy and slow-mo. The whole race was just under control fully, and it's hard to replicate that feeling, It's but yeah, when you just feel like you're on it, you're at your peak. It's a good feeling.
And I believe that morning in 2019 you had porridge for breakfast.
That is correct.
Are you still having porridge for breakfast?
Yes, but haven't really done any racing. But if I would race the car, I do have porridge.
Consistency, that's what we like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Valtteri, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thank
and
you.
Well, best of luck for the rest of this season, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you back on the grid next year.
Thank you, mate. Cheers, my pleasure.
5 Live's Chequered Flag podcast.
Mercedes reserve driver Valtteri Bottas speaking there. It was good to get a fair bit of time with Valtteri, actually. What is next, though, for Bottas, Andrew? He's turned into a brilliant personality since those first days in Formula One, finds himself on the sidelines. It does seem really that the only possible option is that Cadillac seat for next year.
Yeah, he did quite a funny video, didn't he, over the Canada weekend, where it's just sort of positioned on the basis of "I am busy, really," and loads of video of him not being remotely busy going around.
He's clearly not that busy, because he had 20 minutes to talk to me at some point as well over the season.
Exactly. So yeah, look, I mean, I think you're right. I think that is his, at the moment, that looks like his leading option to come back. I don't know how strong an option it is, though, really. Bottas's problem is that he doesn't have money. Well, he has money of his own, but plenty of it.
Doesn't want to spend it.
Exactly. He doesn't want to spend it on buying himself a drive. And some of the rivals for that drive do have a lot of sponsorship money that they can bring with them. So Sergio Perez, for example, seems to be the sort of leading candidate for one of the seats there at the moment. He's got a bunch of Mexican money behind him. And of course, Cadillac is a American brand. Mexico is in North America. So that all kind of ticks a load of boxes. And of course, I think, ironically, although Perez, his reputation suffered a lot at Red Bull over the previous 3 or 4 years when he was with Verstappen and basically couldn't handle him and ended up getting fired. And they paid a lot of money to get Perez out of his contract, Red Bull, which doesn't look like the wisest decision at the moment, given how badly Yuki Tsunoda and before him Liam Lawson have struggled alongside Verstappen this year. So that's actually ironically done Perez's reputation some good, I think. I mean, no one's saying he's a driver of the level of Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton, Russell, Norris, Piastri, etc., Alonso, but decent sort of second-level driver and probably a very good candidate for a new team like Cadillac. And also waiting in the wings is Zhou Guanyu, who also has a potload of cash to bring to that team. He's also managed by Graham Loudon, who's the team principal of Cadillac, which isn't going to harm his candidacy, obviously. Is
that a conflict of interest? I don't know.
That's Flavio Briatore, eh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, Zhou Guanyu, we know he brings money, and of course he's Ferrari's reserve driver this year, isn't he? And we know Cadillac are going to take a Ferrari engine to start with too. So I wonder if there is a deal to be done there along those lines. But we'll see. Still no news as we record on the Cadillac driver front. They've still got time before they have to make those decisions. But there are and have been some more decisions that have been made. More calendar news, Andrew. Canada, fresh off the back, has secured its future until at least 2035. And a Grand Prix in Bangkok moves a step closer after Thailand's cabinet approved a bid to host a street race in Bangkok, along now with South Africa after the Kyalami circuit was awarded FIA Grade 1 status. That's not been confirmed to return, but they're moving towards that being a Formula 1 race in Africa in the next few years. Is this positive signs or not?
Well, let's go one at a time. Canada, that was looking a bit shaky for a while. You will know, Harry, from your previous experience of Canada, that the logistics there have not been great over the last few years. And last year, Stefano Domenicali, his patience finally snapped and he read them the riot act, basically. And I can tell you, having been to Montreal this year, that the logistics and the organisation around ingress and egress from the track was much better this year. And they're going to continue to improve the facilities. So that's part of the new deal. So I think I enjoyed the Canadian Grand Prix more than I have done for a long time this year, actually, as a consequence of that. So that's all good news. And they've moved it to be next to Miami, not right next to Miami. It's not 1 week apart. I think it's 3 weeks, actually, Harry, is it?
It is a bit of a gap.
Still a gap, but it means that a bunch of equipment can go direct from Miami to Montreal without having to come back across the Atlantic. So that's all a part of Formula One's sustainability drive. Thailand looks very realistic at the moment. They do have the money, I'm told. It's just a question of doing a deal with F1, which has not been done yet. But they needed to get this cabinet approval that happened this week. That was the sort of next step towards getting that deal secured. So that's looking quite probable, I would say. South Africa, completely different question. There's basically two competing projects in South Africa. One is the Kyalami one, and as you say, Harry, they've got permission to upgrade that track to Grade 1 status at Kyalami. That means it can host a Grand Prix once those changes have been made. We're talking about safety and so on. They're not doing anything with the layout, which is the same as the one that they used last time Formula 1 was in South Africa in 1993. And then the other project is in Cape Town, which is a street circuit. I don't think either of them are very realistic at the moment. There's all sorts of problems with Kyalami. It looked like for a while, about 2 or 3 years ago, that they were moving quite close to a deal with Kyalami, and then there were some problems with the organiser. I don't think that's been resolved yet. And Cape Town, again, there's an issue with money, that there's no money there, basically, or not enough. And so races don't happen unless someone can pay for them. There's another project in Africa, actually, in Morocco, in Tangier. People are working on it, including Eric Boulier, the former McLaren racing director and Lotus team principal, but there's no money there either, or certainly not enough. So I think we're still some way away from seeing a race in Africa, and people may remember a year or so ago there was talk about a race in Rwanda on a new track near the new airport that they're building in the capital, Kigali. Again, that's receded, to say the least, in recent times. There's all sorts of questions about that, some of them to do with human rights. So I think I wouldn't say an African Grand Prix anywhere is looking like a particularly immediate prospect.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye, of course, and know Lewis Hamilton has always been a big advocate for us to return to, or for Formula One to return to Africa. Last time, as you said, we haven't raced in Kyalami since 1993. So we will keep a track of how that all unfolds. And finally, a bit of news that I feel like it got a little bit hidden amongst the racing of the Canadian Grand Prix was that Renault have announced that the CEO, Luca De Meo, is resigning. Now, he has been quite instrumental in trying to sort of turn around the fortunes of Renault and, of course, the sporting division Alpine and the F1 team. But Alpine still looks a little bit lost at sea, especially with the departure of Oliver Oakes and the many high-level management players over the last couple of years. So what does this mean for the future of Alpine and the F1 team?
Well, it's a very good question, Harry, because the current arrangement of Renault in Formula One with the Alpine brand, that's very much Luca De Meo's baby. And it was him who brought in Laurent Rossi as the CEO of Alpine. Laurent Rossi and Luca De Meo, between them, completely bungled the driver market in 2022 and lost Fernando Alonso and Oscar Piastri. Doesn't look good on either of them. Laurent Rossi was soon removed. All of the stuff that's happened at Renault Alpine over the last 5 years has basically been on Luca De Meo. So the fact that the team's failing is his fault fundamentally because he was in charge. And he brought in Flavio Briatore as executive director last year to try and turn the team around. And it was under De Meo that Renault made the decision to abandon their F1 engine program, which they've been running effectively since 1977. And that caused a lot of opposition in France, as you can imagine. So the problem that Alpine have now is that they have a team set up in Luca De Meo's vision, but Luca De Meo's not there anymore. And Flavio Briatore was a very controversial appointment in the first place, and he has lots of opposition within Renault. How long is he going to stay at that team as a consequence of De Meo leaving? We don't know. What is the new Renault leadership, whoever the new CEO is, and we don't know yet. They haven't said who that's going to be. What are they going to think about Formula One? Are they going to agree with this vision that De Meo has led for Alpine? And quite apart from all of that, you have to say that, there's not really been any evidence of progress at Alpine in the last year or so. There's been little brief highlights, and then they've slipped back again, and they're really not doing very well at all this year. So I think all we're left with there, Harry, is question marks, and quite big ones, quite big existential question marks about that whole programme at the moment. Of course, it's a Formula One team. It's worth a lot of money. But we don't know what its future is.
And currently last in the Constructors' Championship, 9 points adrift of Sauber, who've jumped them now. So let's see what news beckons for the Alpine F1 squad. Of course, they'll have Mercedes power units in the back of those cars next year when we get the regulation changes. Okay, I think that just about does us. We had the big F1 movie premiere in New York. Were you there on the red carpet, Andrew?
I was not, no.
No?
I came back to the UK. I did see the film in Montreal. There was a special media showing on whichever night it was, Thursday, I think. I have my own opinions on the film, but I'm not a film reviewer, so I'm going to keep those to myself. I noticed it's had some 4-star reviews in various newspapers this week. I was not in New York, no.
Okay, no, didn't get to see you strut your stuff on the red carpet. If you want to have a little peek behind the scenes of the F1 movie, starring, of course, Brad Pitt and executive produced by Lewis Hamilton, you can check out the Back at Base F1 movie special. That's on the Chequered Flag podcast feed on BBC Sound, so you can just have a little scroll back until you find that. F1 is back next week for the Austrian Grand Prix. You can hear all of our usual Chequered Flag podcast content from Friday the 27th of June. Plus, we'll have live coverage of every session, including the race, across the 5 Live network. You'll be in the company of Ben Edwards and Alice Powell for that one. All information such as session times and exactly where you can hear us will be on the BBC Sport website. Thank you for your company. This has been an IMG production for BBC Sounds.